September 2012 is an often overlooked part of Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Coming off the lows from handloops, unreasonable one-turn kills, or just general unfun gameplay, the September 2012 banlist attempted to alleviate some of these major issues with the game, and I think it did a great job. Now commonly referred to as REDU Format, with well over a dozen viable decks, where duelists can show great skill expression. Edison Format is the peak for Yu-Gi-Oh's 5Ds era. Could REDU be the peak for Zexal? Well, let's find out. Starting off, I have 3 copies of Wind Up Magician. Magician is how you start all of your plays. By activating a wind up effect, you can, in the next chain as a trigger effect, use Magician to summon any wind up from your deck. This can even summon itself from the deck, and it's not negated in any way. So all we need with the Magician is a way to activate a wind up effect. The best one is the TCG exclusive Wind Up Shark. This coined the infamous term of Magician-Shark combo, which was just the combination of a Magician and Shark. In the summer format prior to the September 2012 banlist, the Magician-Shark combo ended on Wind Up Hunter, taking away half of your opponent's hand, with the ability to take even more should you draw an extender like Pot of Avarice, for example. However, in REDU format, after the September 2012 banlist, a lot of people just chose to go for a Shock Lock instead. The term Shock Lock comes from summoning a Shockmaster and locking down your opponent with its effect. Nowadays in 2025, Shockmaster can be summoned with much more ease in the Yu-Gi-Oh TCG. But funnily enough, Shockmaster wasn't actually that unhealthy back in 2012. There is a plethora of different ways to answer an established Shockmaster, and those can be quite punishing for the wind-up player. My personal opinion as of right now is that Shockmaster is actually healthy for the format because it shuts down decks like Chaos Dragons, or other combo strategies which would just be oppressive to the format. By having Shockmaster in the format, you give a big boost to decks like Yugioh or Dino Rabbit, which can play a control game and play out of a Shockmaster lock. But we'll talk about this later, and I'll also do a combo tutorial showing how to do Shockmaster lock and various ways to prevent it, as well as how to play around their preventative cards. But that is not all that Wind Up Shark can enable you to do. Shark can change his level to 3 or 5. So this deck very much acts like a toolbox deck, having access to rank 3, 4 and 5 plays. Can usually let you come out on top in any given situation. Moving on with the profile, 3 copies of Wind Up Rabbit. Albeit not as powerful as Rescue Rabbit, still Wind Up Rabbit is a very good card for your deck, and allows you to play a long game. Every single Wind Up name in the main deck can only use their effect once while they're face up on the field, because once you've wind up the toy, you can't unwind it. But if you face it out with Rabbit and it comes back, it's no longer the same card, and thus you can use the effect again. So there's many nifty ways to use Rabbit, not only to chain to your opponent's effects and remove your monsters from the field to dodge their removal. You can also dodge things like Fiendish Chain, Effect Veiler, or you can just run away with the Rabbit when they declare an attack, making sure that your name stays on the field. Whilst Magician Shark is a very powerful 2-card combination, the combination of Rabbit and Factory, which is your continuous spell that's a Rhoda each time you activate a wind-up effect, can be just as, if not more powerful, into certain decks than this 2-card combination. For the last wind-up name in the main deck, I have 3 copies of Wind Up Rat. When you wind up the Rat, you summon a monster from the graveyard. So just Rat on its own can be a 1-card rank 3 play, similar to a tour guide but from the graveyard. This is also a very powerful 2-card interaction. When you Rat back the Rabbit, you can Rabbit away the Rat. Rat comes back next turn, you turn it to attack, and you use the effect. This gives you a +1 every single turn. And should your opponent not be able to deal with a Rabbit, you can pretty quickly take over the game from there. This is it for the wind-up names. I chose not to play Updog. What's Updog, you may ask? Well, not much, but thank you for asking. Wind Up Dog is a level 3 wind-up monster with an ability to turn himself to level 5, thus increasing his attack by 600. Should you want to play more names for utility, you could either play Wind Up Dog or Wind Up Warrior. Both are okay seeing as they are names, but their effects are not very good. Another thing I'd like to touch on is the usage of Wind Up Hunter. So in the summer format of 2012, Wind Up Hunter was used in the Handloop. And the reason why people cut this card from the deck is because if you can go for Shockmaster and you win the game, then you don't really need to play a brick in your deck in Hunter. However, the reality is that even if you go for Shockmaster, it's not even a guaranteed auto-win. There are plenty of good ways to counteract a on-field Shockmaster, be it either Rivalry of Warlords, Ghost Match, or Needle Sealing. You could even compulse away the Shockmaster, and then they just have to grind through your traps anyway, and they're kinda back to square one. So if you think that the Shockmaster isn't even enough to win the game, then why bother going for it? Well, the Shockmaster might be very good against certain decks like Chaos Dragons, which are not trap decks. Or if you draw Mystical Space Typhoon, you can just remove the rivalry, and thus you don't need to really worry about it. But you do still lose the entire field to a Needle Stealing. And this is where I think Wind Up Hunter might come into play. There is a way to combo with Magician and Shark when you end on Sen Mains, Sen Meiti, and you handloop your opponent for 2 cards. So they have 4 cards, and they have to deal with a Sen Meiti and a Sen Mains. So should the meta evolve in such a way where people just go for these side deck hate cards to deal with the Shock Lock, then I think a better approach with the Wind Up deck might just be going for the Hunter handloop, especially post side. I will make a separate video talking about the pros and cons of Hunter and the Shock Lock. So make sure to check that out after you're done with this video to learn more about wind-ups in REDU format. For the other monsters, I play 2 copies of Torguide from the Underworld. Torguide summon Torguide from deck is a 1-card rank free play, meaning we can make the Sen Mighty, and then if we have Shark, we have full combo. I chose not to play Sangan because the only time Sangan comes up is if you go summon Torguide, they have Max E, and they don't have a Thunder King. I think Sangan searching a combo piece is a bit too slow, and I would always just go Torguide into Torguide to make my combo anyway. And for the last monster, I have 1 copy of Cardcar D. This is more of a combo style wind-up deck, which is why I don't play cards like Pot of Duality. Although you certainly could play a more low to the ground wind-up deck, where you play Duality, multiple card cards, maybe Thunder Kings, and exclude the Torguides. If the format develops into hand trap meta, where people just main deck Maxi and maybe even Effect Veiler, I could certainly see this version of the deck having more merit. But in these early stages of the format, I think just playing a higher ceiling is completely fine, because every single deck does so many different things and the meta is not really established. But I am still maining 1 copy of Cardcar D, because Cardcar is very good in the hands where you don't open a starter card. So the Cardcar D could definitely be a 2-off, should you want more starters, but I think the 1 copy is fine, seeing as you already have very many combinations of different cards that allow you to play, and the Cardcar D is just an additional one of them. Then for the spells, I have 3 copies of Wind Up Factory. For those of you who play Edison format, you know just how powerful a continuous monster searcher can be. And Factory is no different, similar to a Black Whirlwind, but arguably better, seeing as it works every single turn and on your opponent's monster effects as well. There are many 2-card combinations in this deck, be it either Rabbit or Factory as we talked about before, Factory and Shark being a good way to at least get started, and once you get any wind-up card in the graveyard, the Rat can then summon them back. So whilst Factory does get you to Magician Shark eventually, just grabbing you an additional play for the next turn can be very good. Then I play 3 copies of Upstart Goblin. As Windup is a combo deck, and life points don't really matter that much, having Upstart to allow your deck to be 37 cards, thus allowing you to see your combo pieces way faster, is very good. Now the Windup deck does lose some games where you're just stuck on normal summons, and Upstart does actually contribute to this because you're not cutting a normal summon to play Upstart. Whilst that is true, the Upstart can draw you multiple Magicians or just draw you normal summons where your opponent has a summon stopper. The fact that Upstart at least allows you to play the game I think is worthwhile. So I wouldn't play Windups without this card. 2 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon. Whilst the Windup deck can very easily play through back row with Windup, Rabbit and Factory, having MST to destroy your opponent's Factory or to destroy a floodgate, or just clear the way for your Magician Shark combo can be very good. And whilst MST is one of those cards that does contribute to bad hands, I would at least be siding free of it because I want it for games 2 and game 3. But since the format is so diverse, I would rather main the card and then have more slots in my side deck. And this card is not perfect, but it's a pretty good card to have in game 1, against pretty much everything besides Chaos Dragons. Then for the Trinity, 1 Heavy Storm, 1 Dark Hole, and 1 Monster Reborn. As I talked about in my Rabbit deck profile, which if you haven't seen it, make sure to check it out should you want to see more REDU format content. The presence of these cards is usually more impactful than their activations alone. The fact that Dark Hole and Heavy exists in the format, and are such blowouts that can win you the game, forces your opponent to play around them, thus not losing to them on the first 2 turns of the game. This naturally causes a slower pace of play during the game, but there are certainly situations where you have to put your opponent on better habits, in particular with the Heavy Storm. And in the Windup deck, Reborn is actually the most powerful of the Trinity. Being a combo deck, the Monster Reborn being able to bring you back a Magician like a Warning for example, or Rat to continue your plays, can make the activation of Monster Reborn game changing. Then for the last 2 spells, I have 1 copy of Pot of Avarice. The wind-up deck can burn through its resources very quickly should you go for the turn 1 full combo, and having a pot of avarice to put it all back and then draw 2 cards can be very good. You can also choose to play more greedily, because if your opponent does have a way to answer your plays, you can just put it all back with avarice. And the last spell is 1 copy of Mind Control. Thanks to Wind Up Shark, you have access to level 3, 4 and 5s at your disposal. So with the Mind Control you can overlay with nearly anything. And against the Rabbit deck, you can take either Laggy or Dolka to push through your plays. For the traps, I play 3 copies of Compulsory Evacuation Device. Compulse is the best generic spot removal card in the format. The fact you can also use on your own cards like a rat, or as a very clean out to Zenmaines or Evolsar Dolka, which are both quite annoying for your deck. As well as being a chainable to MST or Heavy Storm, makes it by far one of the best trap cards in this format. Also, unlike the summon stoppers like Torrential, Bottomless or Warning, this card can be used going second into an established field. For the other traps, I play 2 copies of Dimensional Prison. The wind-up deck can struggle quite a bit on the first few turns of the game, so having Prison to slow down your opponent is very good. And Prison also answers the annoying monsters where Compulse might not do it properly. Against, for example, a Thunder King, a Pachycephalo, a Light Pulsar. And why I'm playing Prison as opposed to Mirror Force is because Prison can be used on Zenmaines, and if Dino Rabbit summons 2 Vanillas and attacks, you can Prison away one of them, and then the other dies in the end phase, not playing into Starlight Road, which Mirror Force would do. Then I play 2 copies of Torrential Tribute. Wind Up Rabbit and Torrential Tribute have very interesting interactions. Something to think about with TT and Rabbit is if you go normal summon Rabbit, and you activate TT on summon, you can chain the Rabbit, tag it out, the Rabbit saves itself, and you effectively Dark Hole your opponent. Another play you have to keep in mind is to always pass priority on Rabbit. What I mean by this, if you have a Magician on your field, and you want to normal summon Rabbit, because you want to banish this to activate the Magician's effect, make sure to summon the Rabbit, pass priority allowing your opponent to use something like Torrential Tribute, and then afterwards you use Rabbit, and they can no longer use TT. If you summon Rabbit, and on summon, since you have turn priority on the summon, you can use Rabbit before they use TT. You go Rabbit chain link 1 and they chain TT blowing away both of these. So just keep that in mind regardless if you're playing wind-ups yourself or against it. 2 copies of Bottomless Trap Hole. As we talked about before with the Dino Rabbit deck, the summon stoppers are both good and bad for this format. They can create a lot of games where you feel like you're just losing because you're so far behind. Because if your opponent has a threatening field and they accompany it with warnings, bottomlesses and compulse, they just stop your summons and then you don't get to do anything. On the flip side, you can also draw a bunch of these when you go second into established fields and they also just don't do anything. So it's not that these cards are particularly overbearing or something that's unhealthy for the format. They're just very polarizing cards and it can create some unfun game situations. So just keep that in mind that sometimes you want to side out some summon stoppers when you go second. If your opponent establishes a field, they might just be dead. Then I have 2 copies of Solemn Warning. Depending on the matchup, Warning can be a bit better when you go second. Say your opponent has a Gear armor face down, well you can Warning it when they flip it up. You can also use Warning against established cards like Zenmaide or a Levier. Thus the Warning can be a bit better sometimes when you go second. But on the flip side, it also pays 2000 life points. Should they then attack you with the other monsters they have, you might just die. And the last trap is 1 copy of Solemn Judgment. As I talked about in my Dino Rabbit deck profile, Solemn Judgment is a very good card to just negate whatever you might lose to. And in REDU format as opposed to an Edison format, you can present a lot more auto-win situations, where you might just lose to 1 card. Say if you have Shockmaster, you can just go Shockmaster and call monsters. Because if they have Dark Hole, then you can just negate it with Solemn. Additionally, your opponent will also have 3 copies of a counter trap, so being able to negate them with Judgment can be very good. For the extra deck, I have 1 copy of Temp Tempo. This card can remove Exceed materials from opposing Zenmaines. 1 copy of Number 30, Acid Golem of Destruction. Against Skill Drain, you can just summon this as a Blue Eyes White Dragon. And even if your opponent doesn't have Skill Drain, being able to act as a 3000 attack body can be very good. I play 2 copies of Zenmaines. The reason why I play 2 copies of Zenmaines is because this deck can very easily access the rank 3 pool, and having 2 copies of Zenmaines being not only a very good rank 3, but also a card for your wind-up factory. 1 copy of Zenmaide Carrier, this card can access any wind-up from your deck, which makes him a very integral part to any of your combos. 1 copy of Levier the Sea Dragon. Levier can extend some of your plays, because you can bring back your banished rats or magicians and use them again. Levier can also take opposing wind-up rabbits in the mirror match. Something that you also have to keep in mind is that your opponent can summon their Livier with Tour Guide and steal your rabbit. And even if they tag out your rabbit, it will come back to their field. One number 17 Leviathan Dragon. This card can go up to 2500 attack points, which is the highest threshold for a rank 3. Excluding the Acid Golem, seeing as he has some restrictions which makes him not the best card to go into at times. One copy of Gemini's Pearl being the highest attack for a rank 4. One copy of number 16 Shockmaster. With this card you can call any card, monster, spell or trap, and they cannot be activated until the end of your opponent's next turn. If you do go for this turn 1, generally you want to call spells, not only because of Dark Hole, but also because your opponent has other spells they might want to use, something like MST, or Upstart Goblin, or Pot of Duality. But it's not a must. You can definitely call monster with Shockmaster and put them on better habits. One copy of Steel Swarm Roach. This card is very good against Chaos Dragons and Heretics. One copy of Maystroke the Symphony Djinn. Maystroke can put an opposing monster face down, and can even be summoned to play around Dark Hole because you can protect it and other djinns. One copy of Wind Up Zenmeister. There's a cool combo where you Zenmeister your own Wind Up monster face down, and then you flip it up with Papal Imperative and use the effect again. He's also a rank 4 Wind Up name, so you can summon a rank 4 and still get a search off a factory. One Photon Papal Imperative. This card is used in your turn 1 combo to allow you to put your rat in attack position when you summon it with Magician. One copy of Tyrus, Keeper of Genesis, and one copy of Adrius, Keeper of Armageddon. I chose not to play Zenmaio, despite being a wind-up and a rank 5 that pops 2 cards, because it's really only good against Yugioh. And I've just noticed that the Adrius and the Tyrus comes up way more often. Then for the side deck, I have 3 copies of Maxi. Maxi is mainly here for the mirror match. This is not something that I put in against Dino Rabbit, for example. Despite me drawing 2 cards if they make a Lagi or Dolka, a lot of the time this card just ends up being dead because they have Macro Cosmos, or you have to use it preemptively, making it an Upstart Goblin in trap form, which is not very good. But this card is very good in a mirror match, both when you go first and when you go second. 2 copies of Thunder King Ryo. I side these in against various different decks when I go first. Having Thunder King Ryo as well as some of the other cards I play in this side deck can allow me to stall out the game against some of these combo decks, and it can allow me to do my push when I feel it to be necessary. Then I play 2 copies of Messenger of Peace. In REDU format, it's quite common that the games go on a very prolonged period of time. And under Messenger, your wind-up rabbits can attack. You usually keep this on the board way longer than Swords of Revealing Light, thus making it warranted to play. 2 copies of Dimensional Fissure. You can do your entire combo under Di-Fi because XYZ materials are not treated as monsters. So should you overlay for a wind-up carrier and use its effect to detach a level 3, it goes to your graveyard because it's not treated as a monster when it's under Zenmighty. While your opponent's hand traps, albeit hand traps, they're monsters still, they cannot be used under Di-Fi. 2 copies of Soul Taker. Rabbit players will usually go for Dolka against this deck, so Soul Taker can just remove it. As well as when you play against Chaos Dragons, being able to remove cards like Thunder King Ryo or Light Pulsar and make it miss timing is very good. The third MST and 1 Dust Tornado. Back removal is way more important when your opponent brings in those aforementioned floodgates against you, so being able to have Dust Tornado to remove them is very good. All in all, this gives you 5 total cards you can draw into an established floodgate, and you can also activate Solemn Judgment to negate it. Additionally, there are some games where you sit on Thunder King Ryo or just rabbits and you grind them out even if they have Macrocosmos face up. So I think this gave me plenty of outs to their established floodgates. And the last cards I have in my side deck is 2 copies of Threatening Roar. The format is still not very defined, so you can run into some random decks in this format. And having Threatening Roar can allow you to survive against certain combo decks, should it be Hieratic Dragoonity or Chaos Dragons, and you can even use this to fend off Gladiator Beasts. If you enjoy my content, make sure to also subscribe to my second channel, linked in the description box down below. There I'll be posting more personalized and exclusive content.